Hi, Diane here from DianeRingle.com. Hey, we made a bunch of head pins a little while ago, and I'm going to show you a project that uses these head pins. So hold on, I'm going to take you down to my workbench. Okay, this is the head pin we made. It is a little loop, and the second little loop there is kind of bigger. So that's the head pin we're going to use. Okay, so I'll show you what we're going to make. This is what I've done with it. We're going to do 3 pieces of wire and use the planishing hammer to spread those out on the bottom. That's what these little dangles are. I love the way the light catches those flattened out paddles. So we're going to make 3 of those, and then we're going to slide it onto the head pin along with these copper spacer beads. And then on top of that is a really nice lampwork bead. I think that's probably from Serena's beadery. I make lampwork beads, but they're a little wonky. This looks much nicer than mine, so that's probably where I got it. So that's the project we're going to do. Let's get started. Okay, again, working with 20 gauge wire. This is silver wire, but it's copper core. It's beadsmith wire. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is use a planishing hammer. Now, a planishing hammer has this nice rounded edge on it, and what this does is when you hit the wire with that, it doesn't leave an edge mark because it's tapered. If you use the regular kind of hammer that's out in the garage, you're going to wind up with these little dent marks all over your wire. That's why you need the rounded surface. Let's see, can you see how that's rounded? Anyway, planishing hammer and your bench block. What I'm going to do is hit solid on the end of that wire. So the middle of my hammer is going to be hammering on the end of the wire. And as I hit it, you can see that wire spread out. And that's all we want, that nice spread out end. So let's see, I'm going to cut these off and leave about an inch, inch and a half. So there's the first one, and I need 3 of these. I just pull on the wire to straighten it out a little bit. Then again, aiming the center of the hammer at the end of that wire. Just letting it spread out. That's another paddle. Gonna cut that off and go for the third. Excuse me. Okay, so that's our 3 paddles. Now we want them to be the same length as the other earring. So I'm just putting this up against there and pinching where I think that curve needs to start. I'm going to make a 90-degree bend on that paddle. Oh, and I'm bending down. Okay, if this is the flat plane where this flattened part is, I'm bending down from there, because I want this to hang with that flat paddle forward. So that's the way the bend is going to go. If I have the flattened part on plane that goes this way, and the bend is going down at a 30 or a 90-degree angle. Now I'm re-grabbing, and I'm only coming in maybe 1/4 of an inch on that round nose plier. You can see I'm not up very far because I want a pretty small loop on the end of that wire. Okay, so I'm just rolling the plier back along that wire. And there I've got the full circle on there. And I'm going to trim it with the flush cutters. Okay, so that's the first paddle. Now I'm going to do a second one, and I want that one to be as long as the middle one. So I'm lining the 2 of them up. I don't know if you can see that, but I've got them lined up, and I'm just scooting up here, and I'm pinching where I want that bend to be. this is the flat plane going this way, so I'm bending backward so that it comes down and it'll sit facing forward. Okay, so I'm grabbing and I'm in just about 1/4 of an inch on the plier, and I'm rolling that back around and then bringing that end around. So I've got a nice circle on the top of that paddle, and then I'm going to trim. So there's number 2 done. Now I've got the third one. Same thing, I want to come up over here and make sure they're the same length as the other set. So I'm lining them up. You can see they're lined up. And I'm coming in here and I'm pinching where I need that bend to be, taking that one out. And I'm going to start the bend so I can move my hand. Got it with the flat nose plier. I'm making a 90-degree bend. Now I'm going to come back and grab it with the round nose plier. See how I've got that? I'm in maybe 1/4 of an inch on the round nose plier. Now I'm going to grab that wire and I'm applying pressure to the wire back here, and I'm rolling the plier back to get that circle. Okay. And what you want to have that circle sitting right up on top of the stem, not lopsided one side or the other, and that one's pretty well centered. So now I'm going to come in with the flush nose pliers, the flush cutters, and cut that off. So now I have 3 paddles. And there's my head pin, and I need a bunch of little copper spacers. Oops, these are a different kind of bead. That's a different kind of bead. Okay, so I have my head pin, and I'm going to open it up a little on the bottom, and I'm not making that circle wider, I'm just twisting it open. So you can see I did not make it go like this. I made it go like this. So I've got it twisted open so that those beads can go past that bend. I'm putting on a copper spacer and letting it go down. And then I'm going to put on one of the shorter paddles. Actually, I didn't close all the tops on these. I'm going to make sure they're closed, because once I put them on, I don't want them to fall off. And I'm making sure that the seams are all facing the same direction. Oops. Okay, I didn't do something. Back up, back up, back up. Okay, one thing I did to the other head pin that I've not done to this one is I used the planishing hammer to flatten this out a little bit. And I'll show you the difference. This is the wire before I've hit it with the planishing hammer. It's nice and round. Okay. And on this one, I don't know if you can see it, but it has been hammered. See how shiny that is? It's flattened on one side. So I'm going to do that now to the other head pin. Just taking the planishing hammer, and I'm hitting the bottom of the head pin with the center of the planishing hammer. As I do this, it's spreading out the wire, it's work hardening it. That means it's going to hold its shape real well, but you can see how doing that hammering has made this a flatter, shinier surface here. I just like that look. Okay, so, all right, now we're ready for the beads. So I'm going to slide on a copper spacer, and I'm twisting this open so it'll go around that corner. Okay, and now I need to add one of my paddles. Now the thing you want to make sure is that the tops are closed and they're nice and straight. Okay, I can roll this around on the camera. You want your circle to be sitting on top of that stem. You don't want it lopsided one way or another. You want to make sure it's closed. And then when you put these on, you want to make sure that seam, which is right here on this side, you want to make sure all the seams are facing the same direction. So I'm putting it on this way, and the seam is toward me, okay? So now we're ready for the second spacer bead. Just sliding that on there. Then the middle panel, which is the longest of them. I don't know where they all went. Okay, that one looks longer. And the seam is facing me. Now another spacer. Now the last paddle. And now see this one, let me see how it's a little bent? It's not on a straight plane with that stem. So I'm going to take the flat nose plier and I'm going to come in there and just squeeze, and now it's nice and straight. I'm going to add that one on. And one more spacer. Oops. Okay, so that's going to be the bottom of our head pin. I think that looks nice. Okay, the next trick I have is I have these little, they are bead-along crimp beads. This is a number 1 size, and I found number 1 fits really nicely on a 20 gauge wire, so I have written on there 20, so I know this is the size bead that fits really snug on a 20 gauge wire. So I'm going to open this up and get out one of these little teeny tiny beads and slide that on to the wire. Okay. The reason why I like these is it's so, oops, where did it go? Yeah, make a liar out of me. These are usually so nice and snug that they won't go over that corner. And I think what's happened here is that when I used the planishing hammer, I didn't get that wire wide enough. So I'm going to work all of these beads back off, and then I'm just going to hit that little corner there with the planishing hammer and widen it out just a tiny bit. And hopefully now all these beads will go back around there, but this one, oh dang, okay. I don't normally have to crimp these, but I'm going to go ahead and crimp this because the reason why I use these little beads is to make sure that they don't go sliding down onto that head pin. So what I'm doing here, I'm just pinching it. So I want that bead to stay right at that bend. Usually they do that all by themselves just because they're so snug, but I had to pinch this one. It's a metal bead, it's a crimp bead, that's what it's made for. So you can clamp down on it and keep beads on a wire. So now I'm ready for another copper spacer and the Lampwork bead. And then another copper spacer. Okay, and now we're ready to make the bend for the top of that earring. So what I do, I come in and I push all the beads all the way down here. I grab right in front of that spacer bead with the round nose plier, and I'm right at the very tip. Can you see that? I'm right at the tip of there. And I'm going to make a 90-degree bend. So I'm just pushing the wire down on the plier to make that bend. See how it's a 90-degree bend? Now I'm moving the round nose pliers around to the other side, and this time I'm coming up on the plier about 1/4 inch. And I'm rolling the plier back, applying pressure to the wire with my other hand. Now you can see I've got a circle on there. It's a little lopsided, so I'm going to put the plier back in, and I'm going to roll back a little bit so that loop is sitting right on top of that stem. So now I'm going to pull this down a little bit, and I'm going to wrap around that center pin, wrapping around the head pin. And now I'm going to use the flush cutters to cut that off. Just as close to the center pin as I can get. It didn't cut very well, but there it goes. Now I come in with the flat nose plier and I'm just pushing the end close to the stem, just giving it a pinch. There we go. And now I'm going to add a ear wire on there. So for the ear wire, I'm just going to add another one of those copper spacers on here, and the ear wire I make is just going to have that one bead. So I come in with my round nose plier and I'm leaving maybe an inch, inch and a half of wire. I'm grabbing it about 1/4 inch from the end of the plier, rolling it back to a 90-degree turn. Now I'm repositioning the plier. Again, I'm about 1/4 inch in, and I'm taking that end and I'm pulling it around the plier, and I have to move so that I can complete that circle. Okay. As you can see, it's centered nicely on that wire. Okay, now I'm going to come in with the flat nose pliers, and I'm just going to grab that round circle and hang on to it while I wrap the tail around the stem of that ear wire. So I'm coming around once, then I'm going to slide down that bead that I want. I'm bringing the tail around the bead, and I'm going to snug that up a little bit. Oop, this bent out of shape. So I'm putting my round nose plier inside the round part, and I'm using the bottom part of that just to push that wire down closer to that bead. Okay, now I'm going to grab again with my flat nose plier, and I'm going to continue around that stem until I've gone around once. And I have a little bit of stem left. I'm going to use another pair of flat nose pliers to continue bending that around the stem a second time. When it gets real short like that, it's hard to deal with, but okay, that got a little messy. Just coming in here with the round nose plier, using the second, this part to push that stem back. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and take the flush pliers, the flush cutters, and trim that end off. Again, this is going to shoot right at my face. You can see that V, so I'm covering the end to keep that wire from flying. Okay, so that's what we've got. Now I'm going to use the flat nose plier to hang on to that, and I'm making a 90-degree bend here, backward. So yeah, that's a 90-degree bend. Okay, now you can use anything you want to make the ear wire. Imagine a Bic pen or something. I'm just going to use this round doming tool just so you can see how to do it without a plier. What I do is I come back here, it's maybe a 1/2 inch or so, and I start bending around the wire, bending around it. And then I get to a point where I need to take this end where the beads are and push it forward a little bit so I can make these wires almost parallel. And there you have a nicely shaped ear wire. I generally trim them off about the same place. I come just a little bit lower than the actual end of the earring, that loop there. You want to make sure when you trim that off that the flat side of the cutter is facing the earring. You don't want that pinched end to be part of the ear wire. You want that to be the flat side. So I clip that off. Now I have this cup burr tool that I put on the edge of that ear wire and just spin it around, and that is trimming off that wire, sanding it down a little bit, taking off any sharp edges there might be. So there's the ear wire. Now what I'm going to do to attach these is use some little tiny jump rings, and I like to use 2 because I don't solder the jump rings closed, and sometimes I don't get them perfectly closed or they'll pull open a little bit. So with 2 of them on there at once, it's way less likely to have your earring actually come off because they would both have to open up at the same point in the same place. Okay, so I opened up my jump ring, and I'm just going to slide the earring on, slide the ear wire on, and close that jump ring back up. I'm using 2 flat nose pliers to do that. And now I'm going to add the second jump ring. Now, to open the jump ring, you want to make sure that you twist it open. You're not making the circle wider, you're not opening it up, you're just twisting it open. Now again, I'm going to slide the earring part on, and I'm going to come up and get the ear wire on there as well. Now when I add the second one, I want to make sure that it's not going through the original jump ring and then they get this twisted look. Okay, it did not go through the jump ring. Now I take the second flat nose plier and close that off. Okay, so that's the earring. Whoop, how do I get you to see it here? There it is. Nice. Okay, that's all I have for now. Bye-bye.